You know, with the benefit of hindsight.
Deadpool and Wolverine was a fun release last summer, and I thought it was quite good.
You serious?
But its flaws began to stand out to me over time. That's not to say that it didn't receive overblown criticism at times, and that's also not to say that I don't enjoy this movie anymore, because I still do. But looking back at it, this movie doesn't hold up very well, especially compared to Deadpool 1 and 2, which are still great. Big thanks to TK9851 for editing this video.
Here I come.
His channel will be linked in the description if you want to check him out. With that said, let's get started. Deadpool's character is an overall mixed bag, because while the idea behind his arc is interesting, it's also rushed in execution. The idea of Deadpool holding himself to a higher standard is reasonable considering the end of Deadpool 2, and failing to meet that standard will naturally play into his insecurity of not mattering enough. But after he gets turned down by Happy and told he doesn't have to be the world-saving type, we cut to 6 years later and so much happens off-screen that could either be a movie on its own, or at least be the first act of this movie.
Guess what I'm trying to say is how proud I am, how grateful I am to be standing in a room with every single person I love.
Russell is never addressed and mysteriously disappears. Domino is never addressed and mysteriously disappears. Cable is implied to have returned to his family after Deadpool messed with his time watch, even though he wanted to look after this world for a while.
I'm gonna stick around for a while, make sure the world doesn't shit itself into oblivion.
Now that setup of the group at the end of Deadpool 2 is put to waste in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Aren't you a pedophile?
This in itself is unsatisfying, and even if there is a reason for why these characters are gone, that should still at least be addressed in the story, considering how important they are to Deadpool as a character. I imagine the time skip was done to rush towards the plot involving the TVA and Wolverine, but this didn't need to come at the expense of what Deadpool 2 set up. Now, to be fair, according to the director, this movie was less so a sequel to Deadpool 2 and more of a side adventure, which explains why the main cast was sidelined in favor of Wolverine, the TVA characters, and the Void characters. But if this movie instead started right where Deadpool 2 ended and had the TVA interfere there, that would be a better way of implementing this Deadpool and Wolverine side adventure without interfering with any of Deadpool 2's setups and cast of characters. This would also avoid rushing important parts of Deadpool's story. I think this also extends to Vanessa's character as well. Granted, this movie at least shows why Wade split up with her and why they needed space, but they never showed the aftermath of this from both sides, which is what the first Deadpool movie was effective with. In this movie, Vanessa has moved on, and we're never shown how Wade tried to move on but failed to. Even after a split, I imagine there would be some effort from both sides to eventually resolve it, like what we saw in Deadpool 1. It's not impossible for this to fail, but like I said, this in itself can be a movie or at least a first act. It feels as if we're skipping important chapters just to rush the TVA plot. Deadpool then gets recruited by the TVA to join the Avengers, playing on Deadpool's desire to matter more. When Deadpool learns the Paradox actually plans to destroy his universe, he bashes Paradox's nose and steals the tempad. With this in mind, Deadpool can go anywhere now, and Paradox has showed him where the Time Ripper was, which is how Deadpool and Wolverine find it at the end of the movie. So why didn't Deadpool go to the Time Ripper first to get rid of the immediate threat? He can check Logan's grave later to verify if Paradox is telling the truth, but he can also get rid of the immediate threat straight away and end the plot of the movie. He treats this like his world is screwed after he learns Logan is actually dead.
My world is fucked!
But it's not if he destroys the Time Ripper immediately. He should be doing that first before trying to replace an anchor being. It's not necessary right now. He also tries to convince Paradox not to destroy his universe after finding out that he can't replace an anchor being.
Okay, how do I make this right? I'll do anything. I'm about to lose everything that I've ever cared about because that hairy thunder cunt from down under cunt finally dies and he's standing right behind me, isn't he?
You don't need him to agree. You don't need to argue with him. Just go to the subway station and destroy the Time Ripper.
As for you, I want to talk to your boss.
You're off grid. Your bosses don't know what you sick fucks are doing down here.
What are you talking to him for? You are Deadpool. Why not look for the bosses yourself and inform them? What's the TVA gonna do? Stop you? They tried that earlier and miserably failed while you weren't taking that fight seriously. After this, Deadpool is generally in character and his arc is still functional. A standout moment for him and Wolverine is this car sequence, as it does a good job highlighting how Deadpool and Wolverine differ from one another and showing how they'd act when said differences are put to the forefront. But Deadpool starts acting egregiously out of character during the third act. act. Deadpool should be very urgent once he reaches his dimension because the Time Ripper is closer to completion and he needs to destroy it. Yet he spends a ridiculous amount of time messing with Nicepool when his priority should be reaching the Time Ripper, and considering Cassandra Nova threatened every single universe, every second they have counts. He wastes his time messing with the dog, he wastes time joking about fourth wall breaks. He wastes time prolonging Nicepool's death instead of just simply grabbing his Desert Eagles. They spend way too long on this joke when Deadpool would act with more urgency, like he aggressively did in Deadpool 1 when Vanessa was taken.
I need guns.
Okay, which ones?
I need all the guns!
All right.
I do like the scene where Wade tries to make the sacrifice for himself, and when Wolverine joins him to finish the job. It's a well-constructed scene in isolation, but it would have hit much harder if the story didn't skip important chapters in Wade's life, or neglected crucial characters in his life. The payoff of Wade resolving his relationship with Vanessa feels hollow for this reason as well, because this relationship was barely a focus in this movie. Similar to Deadpool, I would say that Wolverine himself is a mixed bag. He's not a bad character and has good moments in the movie, but he's undercooked in some regards as well. They talk about his dark past and his failures, but it becomes difficult to connect with it if we're never shown this at all. We're just told of this. It would have been a great opportunity to have Cassandra Nova go into Wolverine's head and force him to remember his interactions with his Charles and the X-Men, or the times he tried to push them away, especially since this movie makes a big point about how Wolverine's best choices are motivated by his admiration for Charles Xavier, a character that we haven't seen and we can only rely on the Fox version as a reference for how he might have been.
Just once. I want to be the man that Charles thought I was.
Maybe show some of the blood on his hands as a result of his killings, show us the way he's haunted while the world rejects him and hates the X-Men. The most insight we get into his past are quick edits of reused footage from older movies, some of which includes Logan, despite the fact that this version of Wolverine isn't an old man. Details like this make his characterization feel sloppy, and if we're being honest with ourselves, much of what this movie does to get the audience to care about him is banking on the original Logan. What motivates Wolverine to change is Laura, who talks entirely about how similar he is to the Fox version of Logan. Everything original about this new version of Wolverine is conveyed through exposition rather than showing moments in his life, even during the scene where the movie puts us into Logan's head. There were so many opportunities to be creative there. I think Wolverine's character progression makes enough sense. It's good that we get to see why he changed, but connecting to his character from the jump is difficult when we're given so little material to work with. Deadpool and Wolverine are the strongest parts of this movie, so I wanted to cover them first. The larger issues are noticeable in the plot. So the main plot begins with the TVA capturing Wade to have a conversation with Paradox. He gets offered a chance to join the Sacred Timeline to fulfill an important future purpose. Wade seems to be on board with the plan, so I find it really strange that Paradox tells him something that would make him not on board with the plan, by revealing to him that he intends to destroy his universe and that he has to leave it behind if he wants to matter. Paradox has no plan for if Deadpool uses the weapons that he gave him to retaliate and try to save his universe. If he at least had tighter security, he could force Deadpool to make a decision, but he doesn't have any protection whatsoever, which allows Deadpool to bash his nose and steal the temp pad. How is Paradox even planning to explain any of this to his superiors? Earlier, he stated that Deadpool serves a purpose in the future of the MCU.
In fact, you've been chosen for a higher purpose, a purpose unclear even to me.
Deadpool needs to cooperate in order for him to fulfill his destiny in the Sacred Timeline. How are you even going to get him in the Sacred Timeline after you've threatened his universe and made him want to kill you? He's not going to obey any of your orders, and this will lead to questions from the TVA agents in charge of overseeing the Sacred Timeline. What if Deadpool tells the Avengers what Paradox did to him and the TVA agents see that? How can he ensure that Deadpool keeps his mouth shut about him when he's literally known as the Merc with the Mouth? Why not simply tell Deadpool about the Sacred Timeline and to start interacting and training with the new Avengers for the next 72 hours for an imminent threat? In that time, Deadpool is going to be left under the impression that he's preparing for an important mission. Why not fabricate a reason for the end of his universe and imply that the threat may be tied to his future mission with the Avengers? He doesn't have to reveal that he's the cause of the end of his universe. It's also worth noting that Paradox is blatantly psychotic in this scene, where he shows no emotion over the fact that he's going to kill Deadpool's universe. He even finds it funny. So if the TVA had a good vetting process, they'd easily be able to tell that Paradox is unfit for his role. And why is that? Well, the TVA is not opposed to using variants outside of the sacred timeline to aid in their organization. This is exactly what they did in the Loki show. So the TVA could work with a version of Charles Xavier, or any telepath, and have them help their organization by vetting their workers to see if they're insane or not. One look from Charles Xavier would immediately reveal that Paradox is psychotic and doesn't belong in this role. So with that said, Paradox should not even exist in this movie. This also raises the question as to where Paradox was during Loki Season 2, when Dox, yes that's a real character's name, is trying to kill all of the branching timelines instead of saving them. She started her own group to fight for this cause, and because of their actions, they were killed by Renslayer in the TVA prison, in a very gruesome way where they all get crushed by a shrinking box. You'd think that Paradox would have helped this group succeed if he didn't want to save the timelines. And why doesn't Paradox bring this up to Deadpool to garner sympathy? He would at least add a sympathetic angle instead of just laughing about how he's gonna kill everyone. The plan to take down Deadpool is also really dumb. It doesn't matter what strategy those TVA guards use or how smart they are in the fight. All of them are going to die fighting Deadpool. Why send them at all when Paradox is willing to recruit superhumans? Especially since Paradox is gonna need some kind of explanation for where these TVA agents have gone since they've signed on to this organization. Deadpool was a potential recruit. Blade, Elektra, Gambit, Johnny, and Laura were all originally recruited by the TVA in a similar way, but were sent to the Void when they didn't agree to let their universes die. So Paradox should be aware that he can recruit other superhumans to help out. He can fabricate a story about Deadpool, and before people argue that words aren't evidence, let's not forget that the TVA has access to a ridiculous amount of resources and knowledge. In the Sacred Timeline, Mysterio has technology that can fabricate evidence to look real, so it's not like Paradox has no means of manufacturing evidence to get superheroes to help out. If you send a variant of Wolverine to occupy Deadpool, the issue is solved. If you send Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man to take his weapons and web him up, the issue is solved. If you send Iron Man to blow up Deadpool, the issue is solved. If you send the Hulk... Let's also remember that time works differently in the TVA, and they have access to the whole timeline that Deadpool is in, so it's not like you can argue that it would take too long for them. The amount of choices Paradox can make in the situation makes it abundantly clear why his plan is moronic. The amount of resources he has makes it impossible for him to have failed. The amount of information he has should make it clear that this would fail, since he's been monitoring Deadpool's universe and his actions. Deadpool returns to the TVA by replacing his anchor being, and before we can discuss what happens next, I have a question for you all. Who is faster, a guy who can slice bullets mid-air, or a normal guy with a stick?
Yes, quite the puzzler.
According to this scene, Deadpool can't react to an injured guy with a stick tapping him. This gets him and Wolverine sent to the Void, even though Wolverine is capable of keeping up with Deadpool in combat. So despite both of them matching the combat speed needed to slice bullets mid-air, a guy with a stick is able to send them to the Void. Both Deadpool and Wolverine are nerfed in the scene. For some reason, in an infinite void, Deadpool and Wolverine end up spawning in the same spot. Through the background details, we can tell that anything that gets pruned spawns in at random points, and that happens in the Loki show as well. So why do Deadpool and Wolverine spawn right next to each other? It's entirely randomized. There isn't a singular spawn point. Deadpool sees Pyro overpowering Johnny, and instead of tossing a knife straight into him, he decides to watch Pyro take Johnny's power when these guys are in the way of trying to save his universe.
The shitheels that grew her in a lab called her X-23.
How does Deadpool have future knowledge of the details regarding Logan's plot? Paradox never told him this. There's no way Deadpool would know this in his world. Now, I imagine people will claim that Deadpool knows this because of his meta-knowledge, and I think that's worth addressing briefly. In Deadpool 1 and 2, Deadpool's meta-knowledge was not meant to feed him future knowledge of the plot or major events. Deadpool isn't literally omniscient. His meta-commentary comes in the form of either narration or in-universe humor. When Deadpool makes a joke about Wolverine dying, he doesn't actually know this will happen. He's simply speaking to the audience for presentation. To give a comparison, it's the same way that Tobey Maguire's narrations in the Spider-Man movies aren't canonical statements from him, but rather exist for the audience, though Deadpool obviously takes this to a further extent for comedy. Now, when Deadpool makes these jokes in canon, with other characters present, that is a different form of his meta-commentary.
Wasn't talking to you. I was talking to them.
We can attribute these moments to Deadpool's sense of humor. He enjoys pretending there's an audience there, which appears insane to people in canon, but it's funny for us because we're the audience. There was never a moment in the first 2 Deadpool movies where Deadpool was given future knowledge of the plot or world that would factor into his decisions or how things play out, because that's just unbalanced and nonsensical. Putting no limits on meta-knowledge or humor is how you end up with a mess like She-Hulk. There was a clear limit in the first 2 Deadpool movies, but this movie randomly feeds him knowledge of the plot of Logan. That simply doesn't make sense. He shouldn't know any of this. Pyro calls Paradox to tell him that Alioth didn't get Deadpool and Wolverine, and that Cassandra Nova wanted to mess with him. I don't know why Paradox is so concerned with Deadpool and Wolverine. They're stuck in the void, so as far as he's aware, they can't actually stop his plan. Does Paradox or the TVA just worry about and monitor every character in the void in case they work with Cassandra Nova? Why? Even if we entertain that small possibility, why rely on Pyro to have the job done? If Deadpool and Wolverine wanted to make a deal with Cassandra Nova, how would Pyro stop that? Why not recruit a version of Quicksilver to put Magneto or Juggernaut's helmet onto Cassandra Nova? Why not take a sling ring and learn how to use it? If they can get Infinity Stones and use them as paperweights in the Loki show, surely they could learn how to use the sling rings themselves and use them to send Cassandra Nova in space, or use it to slice her in two.
Cassandra is a lunatic wild card.
Okay, and the issue is solved if they used the sling ring to have her killed. And even if they were too afraid to deal with Cassandra Nova, what's stopping them from using the sling rings to teleport Deadpool and Wolverine to space? Even if they keep regenerating in space, they can't physically do anything or make any deals with Cassandra Nova. Also, why are only Deadpool and Wolverine treated like this much of a threat? Paradox only takes actions on Cassandra Nova because of the risk of Deadpool and Wolverine making a deal with her, but the same threat is applicable to the others that they tried recruiting then sent to the Void, or anyone who enters the Void at all. Why is he only taking action now? Is it because Deadpool and Wolverine are the title characters, so the world only needs to react when they're relevant? So Deadpool and Wolverine meet X-23's team. They get in a car to drive to Cassandra Nova's base and fire a rocket at the entrance. Once they park, for some reason, Cassandra Nova's goons just watch them leave the car instead of raining fire on them after they've just blown up several of their teammates. Out of self-preservation, why didn't they shoot them as soon as they parked? Why let them exit in style? Deadpool and Wolverine eventually make it back to the Fox universe. Now, when time is of the essence, for some reason they didn't take any of these cars to drive to the subway station and instead run all the way there, even though Paradox is almost ready to end Deadpool's universe.
Theoretically, you could stop her by short-circuiting the feeds in the chamber below. One of you were to create a circuit between the two feeds, then the released power would destroy the machine. But, well,
Come on, man! If you're not gonna swallow, spit it out!
whoever formed the bridge would be annihilated.
I could live with that.
Yeah, I can live with that too, actually. You know, we survive anything. We're like cockroaches.
Not this time. This is matter and antimatter. They do not play nicely with each other. When they mix in your body, you will be atomized. Trust the laws of physics if you don't trust me. Even if you lived long enough to make the circuit, you will die down there.
Why is Paradox telling them this? If they fail the mission, everyone including himself dies. If they succeed the mission, then at least one of them dies. If they're willing to take the risk anyway, why would Paradox try talking them out of it? This is an advantage for him. Even if one of them survives, he still has a chance to escape after they leave him behind. Wait a minute, why frame the situation as if only one of them is needed to create a circuit between the two fields? Why not say both of them are needed, so they're not under the impression that it has to be one? Telling them that both of them are needed makes it so that both of them would die.
Let's get this Deadpool variant back to the Void.
How do you know that this is a variant? Did you ask him or anybody here?
You led an Omega-level mutant to this timeline.
No, she came here on her own accord. Deadpool didn't lead her here. Why are you making claims without any information?
And you shouldn't even be near this timeline.
So, again, how do you know? You didn't even know which timeline Deadpool was from, so how can you conclude that this version of Wolverine doesn't belong here? That pretty much covers my big issues with this movie. The plot doesn't work, Paradox doesn't work, the world building is broken, Deadpool and Wolverine have mediocre character writing. This movie is a 3 out of 10 overall. Again, big thanks to TK9851 for editing the video. Also quick thanks to Knight for slightly improving the thumbnail after I made it. His socials will be in the description. That's all for now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let me know what I should review next. I'll see you all later. Goodbye.